So, when I say green tech in Africa, what picture pops into your head? Maybe a few solar panels on a rural school? Or do you see the engine of a whole new industrial revolution? The difference between those two images is absolutely everything. And today, we're going to dig into how sustainable technology isn't just about aid, it's about power. That picture on the left, that's the story we hear all the time. Small, well-intentioned, donor-funded projects that are honestly pretty isolated. But the real story, the one that could actually change everything, is over on the right. It's about taking these same technologies and using them to power factories, build entire economies, and shift the whole conversation from aid to industrial might. And here's the thing, right? Green energy isn't some magic bullet. As this quote makes crystal clear, it only becomes a tool for real transformation when it's deliberately connected to local industries, backed by smart policy, and driven by African priorities. And that's the exact idea we're going to put to the test today with some real-world examples. Okay, so to really get this, we've got to start with a super basic principle. Industry runs on energy. Reliable, affordable power, that's not a nice to have. It is the absolute foundation for any kind of serious economic transformation. And look, when we say industrial transformation, we're not just talking about putting up a few factories. We're talking about fundamentally rewiring an economy's structure. It's about making that big shift from just shipping out raw materials to creating finished, more valuable products right at home. That's how you capture more jobs, more skills, and more of the profits for your own economy. This really breaks down what that journey looks like. Step one is pretty simple. A country exports its raw stuff, minerals, crops, you name it. But check out step two. This is the game changer. Processing, manufacturing. This is where the real value gets created, where skills are built, and where good jobs come from. The whole goal is to capture this crucial middle step. And guess what that middle step absolutely positively needs? Yep, power. So let's think about it. What does having a reliable, homegrown green energy supply actually do for a country? Well, it pushes down costs for factories. It slashes the dependence on expensive imported fuel. But maybe most importantly, it creates a stable, reliable grid. And a stable grid? It's basically a giant magnet for serious, long-term investment. All right, enough theory. Let's get concrete. We're going to dive into 3 real-world examples from across the continent, and each one teaches us a totally different lesson about how green energy is already making a real industrial impact. Okay, first stop, Kenya. And the big lesson here is something that every industry absolutely craves more than anything else: reliability. I mean, just look at the scale of this. In 2024, geothermal energy was providing a whopping 43% of all of Kenya's electricity. This is not some tiny pilot project. This is a core piece of their national energy system. And unlike solar or wind, which can fluctuate, geothermal provides what's called baseload power, which just means the lights stay on day and night. It's always there. And that kind of rock-solid reliability, it has huge industrial consequences. It means factories aren't hit with costly shutdowns. It brings down production costs. It gives investors the confidence they need to sink money into long-term projects and helps support huge industrial parks. What Kenya proves is that sustainable energy isn't just good for the planet, it can be a massive competitive advantage for business. So, Kenya shows us what the right technology can do. But our next lesson from South Africa is all about the power of the right strategy. Just wow. Look at that number, over 73,000 job years. That's like creating one full-time job for a year 73,000 times over, just for South African citizens. Now, something like this doesn't just happen by accident, right? It was the direct result of a really smart policy that made private investors create local jobs and build up local supply chains. But South Africa also teaches us another critical lesson. This stuff isn't just technical, it's deeply political. You've got the promise of green jobs and new investment, sure. But then you've also got powerful fossil fuel industries pushing back and real, valid concerns about who gets left behind in all this change. Any successful strategy has to find a way to navigate both sides of that equation. All right, for our third and final lesson, let's head to Namibia. They've got these massive ambitions for green hydrogen, and that really brings a crucial question to the table: ownership. And this quote just nails the central risk here. Green hydrogen could be an absolute game changer for Namibia. But if all of that amazing potential is just exported to power richer countries, you're running the risk of repeating a very, very old story, one where Africa's resources make other nations wealthy. It's the exact same old story of dependency, just painted green. So you really have to start asking these tough questions. Who's actually capturing the value from these giant projects? Are the jobs going to local workers? Are local companies getting the contracts to build the supply chains? And maybe most importantly, who really owns and profits from all this in the long run? The answers to those questions are the difference between transformation and dependency. And hey, this isn't just some academic debate. This is real. Check out this timeline. A huge international partner actually pulled out of Namibia's big hydrogen project. And the reason they gave? It wasn't a problem in Namibia. Nope. It was because the market back in Europe was slow. I mean, you couldn't ask for a clearer example of the risks you run when you're totally dependent on outside forces. Okay, so let's pull all this together. We had reliability in Kenya, smart policy in South Africa, and the whole ownership question in Namibia. So, what's the one thing that connects them all? Well, the key takeaway is actually pretty simple. It turns out it's not really about the technology itself, the solar panels or the wind turbines. It's about the strategy that you wrap around them. One is just a piece of equipment. The other is a blueprint for a whole new economic future. And that brings us to what you could almost call a transformation formula. It's not enough to just have the green tech. You have to link it directly to your industrial policy. You have to prioritize building local value chains, develop skills and talent at home, and, critically, you have to make sure there's real local ownership so the benefits stay local. That's the combo that unlocks genuine transformation. So all of this leads to one final really big thought about what the path forward looks like for sustainable tech across the continent. At the end of the day, the question really boils down to this. Is Africa's incredible green potential just going to be used to power the industries of the rest of the world, repeating that same old story? Or will it be harnessed to power African industry, to create jobs, to build skills, and to forge a more prosperous, self-determined future? That's the choice. And it's a choice that's going to be made by strategy, policy, and ownership.